afternoon, everyone. To dignitaries, teachers, students, community members, and most importantly, our veterans. On behalf of the Mamaroneck School District, I'm honored to be able to welcome you to this Memorial Day ceremony. Today, many of us don't have a direct link to the men and women we honor every Memorial Day. However, those of us who love history know that it's not much of a stretch to link the freedoms we enjoy today to the actions of the men and women whose names appear on the Kemper Memorial. We at Mamaroneck High School are so fortunate to have the Kemper Memorial on our school grounds. The names of 101 Larchmont and Mamaroneck students etched into the granite stone are a permanent reminder to all of us that we must remember and we must pause to think about the men and women who died on our behalf. Our young people today are also fortunate that on a regular basis they can walk out of this school to the Kemper Memorial and pay homage to the students who attended the very same school as these young men and women. This year, the Kemper Memorial Park Preservation Fund placed that beautiful sign back there explaining that the pine trees over here had been planted in order to remember not only those who gave their lives, but also to those who returned to our community and brought life. I thought Kiernan's metaphor in the essay, if you were able to hear it in the tiered classroom, was very, very relevant to these pine trees because he spoke about the tree of liberty and over again. We thank all the veterans in this gathering for all they've done on our behalf. And you should feel confident that the faculty at Mamaroneck High School will continue to teach the lessons that must be taught about war and continue to instill a great sense of gratitude to you, our veterans, for all you have done. Thank you.
I'm Bill Goodenough from American Legion Post 90. My job is to call this ceremony to order. And I'll do that. We're going to have the color guard come out. So I'm going to ask everyone to stand. American Legion color guard, host the colors and salute. Right face. Host color. Right hand salute. Good. Out face. And two. So we'll remain standing for the invocation. Uncover.
Two centuries ago, Benjamin Franklin challenged a fledgling nation with these words: "Let us ever remember that our interests are in concord and not in conflict, and that our true greatness rests in our victories of peace rather than those of war." In the spirit of this challenge, we offer this prayer. Almighty God, we stand here today to pay tribute to the brave men and women who gave all in service for our country. Accept our thanksgiving in their sacrifices, and that their families, which have purchased for us a free land, cause us never to take for granted the devotion to liberty. Grant, we pray, fulfillment to those still living, for those who are at rest with thy peace, until men everywhere shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and learn of war no more. We ask this in thy name. Amen.
Pledge of Allegiance. Put it loud, everybody together. And use this flag right here. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To cover. Pastor Chan is going to play the National Anthem for us. Go ahead, Richard. Okay. Richard, you just talk.
We have a slight change in the program for the. Me, it's me. I guess it's a fun fight. Thanks.
Please be seated. Thank you all for coming today. It's nice to see so many people here. I am truly honored that I was given the opportunity to address you today. It's a bittersweet day for many of us. We have a special reason that we want to be here. Some of us want to remember friends, family members, other loved ones who served. Some maybe to say thank you to a veteran. I'm always amazed at the number of thank yous I get on Memorial Day. In fact, just this morning my daughter sent me a message thanking me for my service. She means well. They all do. Unfortunately, the true meaning of this day seems to elude her and many others. On Veterans Day, we give thanks to those who served. Today is about remembering and giving thanks to those who are not here with us because they served. Today we are here to honor those who gave the last full measure. The last full measure. 4 simple words delivered by President Abraham Lincoln in his famous address after the battle at Gettysburg. He was speaking about devotion. Devotion to the cause of freedom, to a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. A cause that those soldiers who died on that battlefield had given, in his words, the last full measure. He was asking those who heard him to increase their devotion to that cause of freedom. He wanted all to be, and I quote, highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain. It's why we are here today, to honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for that cause of freedom, to those who gave the last full measure so that we could have the life that we have today. I'm sure we've all heard the saying that freedom is not free. That's true. It's the most expensive thing on earth. The price tag is written in the stone walls of our memorial and the markers on so many graveyards, both foreign and domestic. Today we honor those that paid the price for us. We keep them in our hearts. We give them our utmost thanks. We wish we could find some way to pay them back. Well, if you truly want to repay them, if you truly want to honor them, here's what you need to do. In your life, be the kind of person that is worth giving the last full measure for. Don't do it on one special day, do it every day. Always strive to make this world a better place so that no life was given in vain. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Green. I'm a teacher here at Mamaroneck High School, and for the last several years, I've had the privilege of overseeing our annual. Started out as an essay, now it's kind of evolved into a more elaborate contest where we ask students to reflect on the importance of a memorial like the Kemper Memorial in our community, and we're lucky enough to have the Kemper Memorial Park Preservation Fund sponsor that and provide a monetary prize to the 3 students who won. This year we had over 50 entries. Some were paintings, some were poems, some were essays, some were spoken words, some were songs, original musical compositions. We had a variety of entries, and it was a very difficult choice, but we chose 3 students, and I'd like to call them up now to be recognized. In the ceremony earlier, we had them share their entries, but now we'd like to just recognize them. And I'd like to call up Kieran Gallagher, Jackson Owens, and Emma Strudwick. Come on up, guys. So all 3 of these young people submitted. Theirs were chosen by the committee, and they all really did a wonderful job with really different entries that all had a similar message, trying to humanize those who sacrificed themselves and gave that last full measure, as we just talked about, and bring home the idea that they're a human being. And they gave up a lot. They gave up people that they knew, they gave up their family, they gave it all for others' sake. And I think all of our entries really hammered that point home. So thank you guys for participating, and thank you for letting me do this, because it really is an honor and a privilege on my part. So have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Peter. We're now going to have a reading of the honor roll, and at this time, what I'd like to do is ask all the students here to stand up, and what we're going to do is we're going to hand you flags in honor, 1 flag for each of the veterans on the memorial, and we'd like you to walk up and place the flags on either side of the monument. So Michael Cantor, all right, just give us 1 second.
Albert A.
Oh, wait,
Anderson.
Michael, we need a line of students. If I can have students come up in front of me and another line over in front of Marianne. All right, don't be shy. Okay, here, can you unwrap that and hand them out behind you? Same thing. Unwrap that first. Okay. What? No, Michael's waiting until we hand out the Here you go. Okay, Michael, go ahead. Thank you.
Albert A. Anderson.
They just go up and
David B. Anderson. John J. Bellum.
That's it.
Edward B. Bergman. Charles L. Berry. Arthur Becker. Robert Bishop. Solomon Blackman. Charles J. Boyle Jr. John Francis Brady. Irving J. Brokaw. Wilbur R. Buckingham. Robert Barnes. James Allen Callahan. Ronald Cargill. Patrick Carino. Clement Castle. Duncan Crane. William B. Kroll, Ann Cullen, Robert Dan, Randall Dobbs, Charles Dolan, Stanley Allen Douglas, Michael J. Downey, John William Errett Jr., William Farrington, Kenneth Foster, Robert Fry, Harry Gears, Donato Greco, David Hall, Thomas Hill, Thomas Hilton, Robert L. Hulson, Ian Jackson, Woodrow Johns, Joseph Kane, Vernon Kemmerer, Richard M. Kemper, Mervyn Ash King, Richard Knight, Guido Lencia, John Landsberg, Ivers W. Lawrence, Roger Powell Lyon, John McDonald, Thomas E. Maloney, Thomas J. Manning, Walter Manny Jr., John Marcella, William A. Mather, George McElroy Jr., Joseph Merliano, Edward Miller, Charles Mitchell, Francis Morris, Hamilton Francis Morris, John T. Morrissey, Fred P. Motts Jr., Luke Murtha, Clark Neal, John E. O'Brien, Alan G. Overton, George R. Payanessa, Samuel F. Payanessa, Vincent G. Piacenti, Michael G. Piacatelli, Edward L. Reitz, John Frank Roma, Frank Romano, Vito Charles Sabato, Tilio A. Santalago, James Schaefer, Raymond Schreff, Richard A. Schmidt, John Schroediger, Lawrence S. Schofield Jr., Orlando Cicito, Joseph John Zaganga, Richard Shea, Alan F. Siegel, William H. Smith, William Harvey Smith, Nicholas Spano, William Steinhauser, Vincent Leo Stouter, Robert Leroy Stratton, Thomas D. Sullivan, William Thiel, John Thompson, Wilbur J. Tompkins, Andrew Edward Tuck III, Richard Twombly, Carlos C. Vitro, Peter von Fritz, George H. Walker II, Kenneth Whiting, Marshall Warner Jr., Lawrence L. Wallenberg, and Robert F. Zimmerman.
Now I'd like to introduce Nancy Seligson, the town supervisor of the town of Mamaroneck.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nancy Seligson. I'm the supervisor of the town of Mamaroneck, and you are in the town of Mamaroneck and the village of Mamaroneck at this moment. And we are all very proud and happy to have the Kemper Memorial here. I have two councilwomen with me here today from our town council, Jane Elkanini and Sabrina Fiddleman. So we are here representing the town board, and I want to thank the Richard Cantor, and I want to thank the Kemper family for making sure that this monument is embraced and appreciated and used in our community in a way that does bring these people to life, that these people are part of our community and we should honor them. I also want to mention that the Larchmont Mamaroneck Historical Society has identified 62 people, residents of the town of Mamaroneck, who fought in the Civil War. And they are going to be bringing those names to us and asking us to also recognize those folks from the Civil War. And of course, the World War II is really the most important war in so many ways in our recent history. But the Civil War is something that we think of as very far away, and yet we had 62 members of our community who fought in the Civil War. So I think it's another opportunity to bring all of us together to recognize our collective history and how important it is, and that these folks are part of our community. Thank you to the American Legion and Bill Goodenough for bringing us together today. Thank you for all of the police officers. I see Chief Paul here today from the town of Mamaroneck. Thank you very much. And thank you also to the students, and congratulations to the 3 students who won the Kemper Award. They did a fine job, and I was happy to hear their presentations. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Murphy. I'm the mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck. We are proud to have this here in the Village of Mamaroneck. We have here today 3 of our leaders of our police department, Chief Leahy, Lieutenant DeRuza, and Lieutenant Falcone. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. Whenever we have this ceremony, it's always good to see so many young people, so many high school students here, because it's important to remember that most of the people on this wall and people on the wall throughout communities all over America were not much older than the children here today. And they gave the ultimate sacrifice, but they also, we lost all that potential, we lost all that ambition, we lost all that love, and we lost all that time that those people could have made to build a better America and a better life. And we thank them for it, and we appreciate their doing it, but we owe it to them to build a world and a republic that's worthy of their sacrifice. And we need to do that every day. Their sacrifice calls upon us to be better citizens. If they could be so young and give so much, we could at least pay attention to what's going on in our community around us, to look out for our fellow Americans, to look out for our reputation in the world, and to make sure that we are a leader to help inspire other communities and other countries to want freedom. And I think we've done that for most of our history, but their sacrifice demands that we do more. It demands that we become the best citizens we can become. I want to thank the American Legion, I want to thank the Kemper Memorial Foundation, all the veterans who are here today for all that you've done. And I really want to thank the kids who have come to participate. You know, for a long time, this was a neglected part of our school grounds. At one point there was a controversy around it, but out of that controversy came something really well. You know, something that's beautiful, that, you know, kids can appreciate their heritage, where your grandfathers and great-grandfathers served in this nation, and to honor that and remember that. And you know, so sometimes when we have controversy, it's not just about drawing up sides. We have to figure out how to come to a compromise and work together. And that's what happened here, and that's what this program is about. And I'm very happy to the Kemper family and the foundation for doing that and for preserving this. And thank you all, and God bless America.
It's really great to be here today. This is truly one of the most meaningful ceremonies that I've attended, and I've done quite a few of them. I'm Ron Dochi, and I've been privileged to serve veterans.
We can't hear you, Ron. Did you shut off the mic?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Ron Tochi, and I've been privileged to serve veterans since I returned after Vietnam. And I'm very, very happy that our county executive, George Latimer, has asked me to lead our Veterans Service Agency. I remember attending so many different services over the last week. This truly is one of the most meaningful services that I attend almost every year since we started this with the Kemper family, the Cantor family, and so on. So I am very, very happy to be among people who I really appreciate, remember what today is all about. Memorial Day truly is a day of remembrance, but it's also all about the tears and triumphs of war. And just to note, this nation was conceived with the courage and the sacrifice of people who built this nation and who were
really dedicated to the principle that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they have shown their faithfulness to that principle since the inception of this nation. There have been 1 million people that shed their blood and died on the battlefield in defense of the people that they loved. And we are here today because of every one of them. When you think about 1 million people being killed, you think about the families that they were part of. So it is literally 100 million people. And this nation truly should remember its roots. I always like to reflect upon an emotional connection to any particular special day. And I've said this before, but I think it's worth repeating. Why do we have a monument? Do we need another war memorial? The money could be better spent on health care or whatever. And you get people that really believe that that be the case. However, I can't think of anything more important than the names of those that are inscribed in memoriam as reminders. And my personal experience goes back about 20 years ago. There was a little fellow by the name of Jimmy Kolonowski who was 7 years old, was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And he, through the Make-A-Wish Foundation, was granted the opportunity to do whatever he wanted. And his last wish was he wanted to meet the boss of the country. At the time was President Bush, the first Bush. We were involved in a major war, and they made arrangements for the president to make a stop in Connecticut on his way to the Persian Gulf. And Jimmy Kolonowski was there with his mom and his little brother. And the president came off and he shook his hands and he gave him time to ask questions and so on. And it was very, very nice. After it was over, a reporter asked Jimmy what was this all about and did you enjoy it? And he said, yeah, it was a lot of fun, but I wanted to go see where he lives and I wanted to know more about what's happening, So a friend of mine who was a very, very successful contractor called me and asked me, he said, if you can arrange a special trip to Washington, I'll provide the transportation. And he had a jet at the time. So I did call Jimmy's mom. I explained who I was, and at the same time, we coordinated a trip. They picked him up in a limousine, brought him to Westchester County Airport. We got on the plane, flew to D.C. We had a limousine waiting, and we went to the White House. And Jimmy was ecstatic. And then I asked him what else he wanted to do, and he said, well, what else is around here? And I suggested that there were a lot of monuments and a lot of places, and we went into the Capitol dining room, and everybody was gracious, and he was in his glory. One of the senators from Illinois gave him the key to Chicago, and he thought that was super. And he was having a ball. And then I asked him, I said, how would you like to go see where they make the money? And he thought that was great. And we went over there, and the line was around the block 5 times, but once they found out who we were, they took him in and he did a personal tour, and he was happy. After that, he wanted to see the big guy sitting in the chair. So we went to the Lincoln Memorial. And coming down from the Lincoln Memorial, I said, Jimmy, would you like to go to see the Vietnam Memorial? What's that? And I tried to explain to him that's where a lot of names are on the wall of people who fought in the war and then didn't come home. Why didn't they come home? And I told him they had died. And we went down and we went through, and he said to me, do you know anybody on that wall? I said, unfortunately, I know a lot of people on that wall. And on the way out, he looked at me and he said, are they all buried there? And I said, no, Jimmy, they couldn't fit all those people there. Those are just the names. And he said to me, why did they die? That's a tough question. And I thought for a moment, I said, Jimmy, they died because they loved you and they wanted you to have a lot of fun like we're having today. And there were a lot of bad people that didn't want that, but they helped make that happen. And he kind of accepted that. We got in the car and we're on our way out. There was someone sleeping on a bench. And he looks out the window and he says to his mom, what's that? And she said, it looks like a homeless vet. And he looks over and he says, I love him. Why don't we take him home with us? And I thought about this little 7-year-old that would be able to comprehend what love was all about. And you think about all those people that died because they loved their families, they loved each other, they loved their country. And that probably was the greatest example of what patriotism and love of country is all about. So I thought about that Vietnam Wall, and I think about it, And maybe some youngster will come along and see a monument like this, and they'll start to ask, you know, what's that all about? And they'll realize that those people died because they loved them too. So it means something. It's emotionally that you get connected, and that's when it really means something. So today, I'm privileged because I take care of the people who take care of us. And I am so thankful to the county executive that he's asked me and allowed me to do the things that we need to do in this county. So I'm proud of the fact that we have a service agency in our county that's second to none. So God bless everybody. Thank you for being here. And let's pass that torch of patriotism on to our young generation. God bless all of you. Thank you.
I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive, and I'm very honored to be the man that asked Ron Tochi to stay on in the capacity as Veterans Services Commissioner. Ron and I both have served this community in the State Assembly, and his leadership up there as head of the Veterans Committee was exemplary work and part of a life commitment that but was in the 82nd Airborne and through his service in the American Legion, and we owe him a debt of gratitude. Ron, thanks again for all of your leadership on these issues. It's difficult to really understand, I think, for those of us who are here now, what exactly the sacrifice was that put them on the wall. We understand in our mind what a sacrifice is. A buddy of yours calls up and says, "Hey, George, I got a flat tire and I'm on the hutch. And I'm in the left-hand lane right by Mamaroneck Road." And you go, "Oh my God, what a mess. You're in the left-hand lane and I got to come out and somebody could ram into the back of us and you have a jack in your car and oh man, I got to get under the car." That's a sacrifice, and it's raining, to go out and help a friend. Or your friend has a big dog, a big lab, and he says, "You know, I'm going out of town for the weekend. Would you watch my dog? I have 2 little dogs. That lab might eat my little dogs if I bring them to my house." But you sacrifice for a friend, you bring the dog over. And every man and those women who are here, who are serving in the police department, they're making a sacrifice for us. Nobody wants to do their job pulling some guy over the Boston Post Road at 2 o'clock in the morning with no idea of what they're prepared to do when they ask for license and registration. And we look at the men who've served us in the military and what they saw in their experience. But the sacrifice that they've made is a step toward what the ultimate sacrifice is. And for the young people who are here, think about this for the future. For those of us who are well past those years, we have to think about it retrospectively. Just imagine if you're in my age category, I'm in my mid-60s, imagine if you died on your 20th birthday. You never lived to be 30, 40, 50, or 60. And for those of you who are young, imagine that you have a year or 2 left in your life. That's all you have left. You are never going to stand on the altar waiting for your bride to come down to get married. What that feeling is like, or to be the bride coming down the altar to marry the man that you love, to live your life together. You're not going to have that experience. You're not going to have the experience of having a little son or a little daughter that you're going to teach how to throw a ball for the first time, or take them to the zoo and watch how they look at it when they see a giraffe for the first time. You're not going to have that experience. If you hang out with your friends down on Mamaroneck Avenue, one of your friends is not going to be with you, and that's going to be forever. Every single day, that friend of yours is not going to be there. Every graduation, every time the family gets together at Thanksgiving, you're not there because you died at the Chosin Reservoir. You died with an IED blowing up underneath you on the road to Fallujah because you were on the beaches of Normandy, or you made some sacrifice in some distant place a long way away from Mamaroneck. And that puts your name on this wall. And we read the names of the people. But do we really know who Alan Overton is? Do we know how old he was? He could be just like one of the young people here. And do we know who Ann Cullen is? Who Thomas Hilton is? They were human beings just like us. They had the same desires, the same feelings, the same interests in life. And all of that was cut short at 20 or 25 or 35, whatever that was. All of those things that we've lived our lives to experience, they didn't. The supreme sacrifice is to give up those years of joy that we all have, those moments. If you're a Yankee fan, you've had a lot of them. If you're a Met fan, you got 2 of them. But those moments, Ranger fan, to see Mark Messier with the Stanley Cup on the ice, how I felt that day. How I felt the day the first time a boss ever said, George, you're doing a great job, I'm going to raise your pay. All of those moments were traded in. They were all traded in. And one of these guys sleeps in Pearl Harbor in the USS Arizona, way down in that water, giving up all of those things so that we can come and go as we please. It is a supreme sacrifice. It's a sacrifice that I'm unworthy of. And as much as I may have ever helped a friend of mine who had a flat tire or ever took a dog in for a weekend, I've never made a sacrifice like that. For another human being, no, I've never done that. You answer for yourself. So do we owe these people something? We do. Do we owe them Memorial Day and Veterans Day? That's the minimum. We're challenged. Anytime we come down this road, we're going to stop at the Nautilus Diner, or, we've been to Boston Market, or we're going to watch a football game up on the field. Come by this monument by yourself. No speeches, no drum rolls, no taps. Just look at that monument and remind yourself that these were living human beings just like you and me. And they never came back to this town. And they all went to the school, probably the old school over there. They went to school just like you guys did. And they gave up all those years. And they did it for us. And they didn't even know our names. So we damn well should know their names.
Before I start, I'd like to just mention some things that are interesting about the year 2019 that many people won't realize. This happens to be the 100th year anniversary of the American Legion. It also happens to be the 75th anniversary of the Normandy landing on D-Day. And interestingly enough, it's the 74th anniversary of the founding of the Kemper Memorial Park. And one of the things, the bright shining stars in American history, this year is the 50th anniversary of us landing a man on the moon. So it shows what we can do as a society when we pull together and meet challenges. I would also like to again thank all the World War II veterans, those who are with us today and those who are not, all other veterans, certainly post VFW Post 1156, represented by Dean, and a lot of us from Post 90 that are here, if the people from Post 347 in Larchmont as well, and certainly all of our dignitaries and most of all the students and the faculty and teachers. So, that being said, what I'd like to discuss is some things about memorials. Memorials are very important for our nation, for our communities, and for us as individuals. They commemorate our history, remind us of those who sacrificed everything for our benefit. They give us a place to grieve and to heal. They refocus us on our responsibilities as citizens if we hope to maintain the values on which our nation was founded. On the other hand, perhaps it would be more accurate to say that memorials are what we make of them. They can be inspirational, they can be controversial, or worst of all, they can be ignored. From the monument in Concord by the Rood Bridge that arched the flood, where once embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard round the world, to a portion of that field in Gettysburg, where Lincoln reminded everyone that it is for us, the living, to be dedicated to the unfinished task of answering the question whether our nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, can long endure. To the Kemper Memorial Park, where we are assembled today, which was born out of the deepest sense of grief of one father, Adolph Kemper, for his only son, Richard, and then expanded to embrace all those families and neighbors in the community who were equally overcome by the overwhelming loss of so many who would never return. In many amazing ways, the Kemper Park highlights what is best in memorials. It was founded by a single citizen without controversy and without any government involvement. It was supported by the entire community, the press and the school district, all working together to research the names of the fallen to be memorialized on the monument. And it was completed in less than 1 year after the end of World War II. Most people will not realize the incredible accomplishment that was. So let me provide some perspective. It took Congress over 59 years to erect a World War II memorial in Washington, D.C., which wasn't commissioned until 2002. And as to the significance, last year alone, over 4.6 million people visited that memorial, clearly testifying to its importance. But if you think 59 years was an inordinate amount of time to build a memorial to one of the greatest events in human history, then you are going to be absolutely astounded to learn this. World War I was also a major event in our history. And there are World War I memorials in local communities throughout our country. But to this day, Congress still has not erected a World War I monument in Washington, D.C. That is over 100 years of failure to acknowledge the sacrifices of 116,000 soldiers who died, 320,000 who were casualties, and 4.7 million who served. In our nation's capital, World War I veterans have been forgotten. The takeaway from this is to get involved and stay involved as much as you can in your community, your state, and the affairs of our nation, because an active citizenry is essential to a free people and a vibrant democracy. It is also essential to getting things done which need getting done. And that brings us back to the Kemper Memorial Park. It was purposely located by the school with the intent that it would be used throughout the academic year to help educate students about the tremendous cost of war in terms of human sacrifice, in the hopes that when students graduated and went on to assume their roles in society, they would carry the lessons with them to build a better and more humane world, and a world without wars. The encouraging news to report in this regard is that for the past 2 decades, the teachers in this district have continued to use the Kemper Memorial as a focal point to teach their students about the meaning of World War II and the significance of what our veterans accomplished. And every year, the Social Studies Department has held a contest in which students are invited on a voluntary basis to express their views about the park, World War II, or any other issues they think are important involving human rights. Finally, the public as a whole has reached out to embrace the Kemper Memorial as an important landmark in the community. And a group of citizens, teachers, and veterans have formed the Kemper Memorial Park Preservation Fund to protect the memorial and add improvements to ensure that it continues to be treasured for years into the future. There could not be a better way to pay tribute to the veterans honored here and to all our other fallen veterans from other wars. Today, the Kemper Memorial is once again inspirational, and my grandfather, Adolf Kemper, would have been very proud of all of you for being here to help make it so. It fulfills everything he had hoped for. Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to ask certain local dignitaries going to place the wreaths of honor. And we'd like to begin by asking Ms. Jan Northrop if she can represent with the wreath for the Kemper Memorial Park Preservation Fund. Thank you, ma'am. Next wreath of honor to be placed is in recognition from the Kemper family. I'm going to ask Mary Ann and Michael Cantor. Please, thank you. For those that don't know, Michael Cantor is the great grandnephew, Michael?
I believe that's correct.
I believe that's correct. Of Richard Kemper. The Village of Mamaroneck wreath of honor, if I can ask Police Chief Christopher Leahy and Lieutenant DeRusa. Lieutenant Malcolm also. Thank you. Next wreath of honor to be placed is from the American Legion Post 90. I'm going to ask our Commander, Bill Goodenough. And the last wreath is from the VFW Post 1156. I'm going to ask Dean, and I'm going to ask Chief. Is the Chief still here? Police Chief Paul Criazzo from the Town of Mamaroneck Police Department, Lieutenant Anthony Hoffman, Lieutenant Hollywood. Thank you for your service. Thank you all for being here. Where'd Rich go? We can uncover in prayer, please. May the Lord our God bless all us present here to memorialize those who died to preserve our liberty and our freedom in our nation and all around the world. May the Lord our God remember those who sacrificed to give this nation its greatness and its richness. May our memory of them be an honorable one, full of the thanks to the Lord who accepted them into his kingdom. The Lord is for all, and in him we believe. And to him we remember all, and to him we pray and remember all who died in service for our country, whether in the air, whether in the sea, or whether on land. O Lord, be gracious and merciful unto them, and let your perpetual light shine upon them. For you are our God, and unto you we ascribe glory now and forever and ever. Amen.